Hello and welcome to Script and Pencils. This is the interview podcast from the Comic Crush. I'm your host, Paul, as always. And today I'm joined by a very, very special guest, someone who I'm really honoured to be talking to, Kelly Sue Deconnick.
I'm
Hello,
so
Kelly
pleased to be
Sue.
here, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. It's great to have you on. Been a fan of your work for a while. It's lovely to get this chance to talk to you about Wonder Woman Historia, the Amazons, which I believe is the full title. I wasn't sure.
Yes, it's so awkward. I wanted to just call it Historia, and they were like, no. We need to get the Wonder Woman in there because apparently that the marketing department was like, no, that is not happening. It was like, okay, well, how about the Amazons Historia? And they were like, no, how about Wonder Woman, the Amazons Historia, or Historia, the Amazons, or something? I was like, all right, fine, whatever. That's not
I guess you've got to know where the money is, right?
Yeah. It's like, probably you know your job better than I do. But so now we have a very, very lengthy title.
DC seem to be specialising in lengthy titles. They've recently redubbed Catwoman When in Rome, Batman The Long Halloween, Catwoman When in Rome, which is Havoc if you're trying to
okay
order it. So there you go. It's it's a fashion, but
yes.
I was saying actually to Lauren that I'm really enjoying everything DC's doing at the moment. I'm just kind of really excited by so much of the line and so many of the kind of experiments in format they seem to be taking, and this is certainly one that I'm most excited about because you're working at this kind of Prestige Plus format, large scale, trim size, which shows off Phil's art beautifully. Does knowing that going in and writing for that actually change the way you write? I'm just curious.
Absolutely, it does. Yes, absolutely, it does. And I'm not sure. What's interesting is I'm going to see if it worked when I see the first book in print, and then none of that information will be applicable to the second book because we have a different artist.
Right.
And none of that information will be applicable to the third book. so there's a little bit of a like, Gaiman has a line, and I don't know if it's actually his or he was quoting someone else, but he's the one that I first heard say it. And he said, you never learn how to write a book, you learn how to write the book you're writing. And I think that is certainly true of Historia, and it's true of Historia for each of the books, which is really kind of fascinating. So learning to write for Phil, then learning to write for Jean, now learning to write for Nicola. They're all kind of different processes, and I'm pretty used to and adept at, or I guess it's not up to me to say whether I'm adept. I feel fairly adept at regular comic size, the regular page. I have a sense of I can look at an artist's work and have a sense of, how many panels they'll be comfortable with, and then I can adjust that for the effect I'm trying to produce and the tempo that I'm trying to produce. But I'm winging it a little bit with this oversize.
Right.
So for Phil, I went in both directions. So I've written a double page splash into every issue, but it was a massive decision for Phil to decide to do. It was the first time I was like, I'm in like oversized pages and I'm going to do a double page splash. that seems like a lot of like that, you know, but his work is so dense and there's so much to see that I wasn't, you know, you knew it wasn't going to be like, well, that was a waste of 2 pages, you know. But I also have panels that are, or pages rather, that are like, I don't know what I like 8 panels wasn't at all unusual, and there are some that are way more than that, and several times Phil added panels. There was a thing too where in the beginning he really wanted to, so we were talking about how do you feel about, you know, do you have a sense with this page size, how do I adjust panel count? What do you think it can hold for like an average page? And he was like, I don't know, give me as many as you want, I'll get them in. I was like, all right, here we go. And boy, man, he does. And then he also, you know, I work very collaborative to begin with, which is, you know, a whole other thing, because I don't naturally have a visual imagination. I think in sounds rather than in pictures.
Okay.
Which makes me an unusual fit for comics writing, but I like to argue that it makes me a really great collaborator, because I'm never going to have the experience of, well, that's not how it looked in my head, because unless I sit down and try to imagine it in my head or sketch it out, I don't see those pictures. I mean, I'm not incapable of it. It just isn't my default thinking. So like, if you tell me, imagine a pink elephant, I can certainly imagine a pink elephant. But if you tell me, okay, stop the movie that you're watching in your head when you think of this story, like, oh, I'm not watching a movie in my head when I think of that story. I'm hearing it. I think in sound and rhythm and sort of in emotional arcs. So I'm always surprised when the art comes in.
So when we say sound, are we talking about sound effects almost, or ambient sound, or voices, or all of the above? I mean,
all of the above, and sometimes music, and then also something that I have trouble explaining, but my dogs are making noises.
Very cute.
Yes. I don't know if you
I can hear,
yeah.
It's coming through. It's lovely.
Padfoot, I think, is chasing something in his dream. But so like, here, I'm pulling some pages over. But so like a page with panels, I can translate that to the way I hear it by clapping it out for you, right? So like this spread,
that's staggering. I mean,
yeah. And this is on my garbage printer and taped together. You know, this isn't even close to. But so like that has like there's like a boom, and then a long sound, and then boom, and then, you know, like that's the rhythm of that page. So there's that kind of sound that I hear, and then there's just the sound of the dialogue. So so just you know, I hear it in my head, and then I literally read everything out loud so I can hear it, because then I'll notice repetitions of words that I didn't notice when I was reading it in my head, or I'll notice things that make my tongue trip.
Right.
And it's interesting because when you're writing for actors, it's really important to make those adjustments that make your tongue trip. it's not so important when you're writing for people's eyes, but I do it
Very
anyway.
true.
I don't know why I do it anyway. I just do it anyway.
And there is so much of comics dialogue that only works because you're reading the dialogue, and it's not even the same as reading a novel or something like that. There's something about that juxtaposition of the image and the and character and all that I always find fascinating. I forget the book I was looking at recently where I read this one line. It was just like, that would absolutely only work in that comic, in that moment, in that,
Yeah.
I think it's a great thing. It's kind of almost a synesthesic approach, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have classic synesthesia.
No.
Speaking of tripping up the tongue.
It's an interactive podcast. There you go.
I don't think I have that in the sense that, like, I'm working with a musician right now on another project who has legitimate synesthesia, and like he hears colors.
Wow.
And I don't think I have that exactly, but there are crossovers. Like I do see rhythm, and I do or I hear pictures. I don't know which way to describe that.
Okay.
And then I also, and I think a lot of people do, I anthropomorphize everything, like everything. So, from like silverware, their relationships and narrative in a place setting. Like, I think I was an only child.
Yeah.
So,
but that's great. That's imagination at work for you. I mean, and I think it's great to be able to humanize things to that level, because when you see that, you see empathy, right? You see,
yeah. I think that we're just wired for story. It's just our brains are built for it. And I mean, that's the reason that comics work, right? It's like I put two pictures together and your brain automatically is going to get us from one to the other. And you're going to start imposing narrative where there may or may not be any, because your brain is just made to do that. And I think it's made to do that for genuine evolutionary reasons. Story is how we practice living. It's how we teach. The story is how one generation is able to communicate with another when our lives didn't overlap at all. And in doing that, the work of those previous generations theoretically saves us time. We don't have to relearn the same lessons over and over again or make the same discoveries over and over again because of story.
And from the sound of it, I mean, that seems to lead us into the heart of Historia, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming the book is taking the stance of a tale told, as a past event rather than the immediacy of this is happening now. Would I be right in that? Or
yeah, so in my head, this book is a history book, like a textbook almost. And that's why we did the library variant. So it's intended to be a textbook that was written for young Amazons to learn the history of their people. And so there's a couple decisions that we make in doing that. And one is it centers the female reader, right? So if we're talking to the young Amazon, then we're talking to a young woman. And everyone else is invited to read this book. I think there's a lot here for everyone to enjoy. I don't mean to, it's not for you to anybody. Everyone is welcome, but we're centering a certain audience in a way that, other audiences are frequently centered, and everyone else is welcome too, but so it assumes a female readership. It is aimed at a young, the conceit is it's aimed at a young Amazon, and basically in I have it, the first page is blank because the idea is tabula rasa. The idea is, all you think the history of the Amazons, but history is written by the victors, and in the war between the Amazons and the world of men, the Amazons lost. So the history well, here's what it says. It says, the Amazons, they whisper, warrior women, as though such a thing were foreign to our sex. Some say they cut off their breasts to aid the flight of their arrows. Some are liars, fabulists. The children of Ares, the daughters of war. No, the Amazons have no fathers. Surely this we know. The Amazons sequester themselves from the world of men, save for Diana, a gift from the warriors of Themyscira, our Wonder Woman. No, not that either. None of it. History, young one, is written by the victors. And in the bitter battle between the Amazon and the gods of men, the Amazons lost. There is no objective version, neither this one nor that. But this is our story, the Amazons' Historia. And here it begins.
That's amazing. See, that's straight away, that's really evocative. And, you just get that sense of kind of time and age and history, and that's incredible. Have DC tried to make it contractual that you'll be doing the narration on the audio comic or on the motion comic for this if they go down that route?
There you go. I think they could do better than me, but yeah, it's I do like to read everything out loud.
Yeah. Is that I kind of want to ask that about that as a writer, because I personally feel too self-conscious reading things aloud in the house when I'm typing, even though I kind of do need to, really.
Yeah.
Do you, is that something you can only do because you live with another writer, or do you think you find that difficult?
I share an office, and Turner has to hear me mumble to myself all the he's out getting lunch right now, so he has to hear me mumble to myself all the time. I also sort of move my body around sometimes, to act things out in some way. So yeah, no, I'm a dork. I'm just a dork. There's nothing cool about it. There's nothing. I'm not even I'm a dancer, so let me move with great. No, I am not any of those things. Oh, the worst is there's this other thing that I'm working on right now, and I wrote a whole section of it in slam poetry verse,
right?
And I had to read it in front of a whole room when we were reading this thing aloud. I had to read it in front of a whole room of people who are professionals in what leaders in their fields, and I was like, this is mortifying and I want to die. But and
was the reaction?
Everyone was very sweet to me. So but I'm like this 5 foot tall little white girl reading this part that was written for a 6'4" black man doing slam poetry. I'm just like, oh God, this is everything about this is mortifying.
But it's great to be able to kind of live in those spaces for a while, right? I mean, to kind of explore those sides, not necessarily of yourself, but of other people, because I think writing is to a certain degree, respectfully, hopefully respectfully co-opting other people's existences.
Yeah, so this is
temporarily.
Big conversation that we're having right now. And I think that there are a lot of conflicting truths. And so particularly when we talk about the stories of marginalized peoples, those stories have been told in our modern history by white folks, right? And stories of women have frequently been told by men, and
sure,
people writing from spaces they don't inhabit. And is that problematic? Absolutely it is. Is it problematic to say you can never write any experience but your own? Yes, it is. So I think what we have to do is we're trying to, like, there's this is one of the things about living in the world of Twitter, right? Is the world is very complex, and it can't be reduced to 260 characters, and discussion and real idea development doesn't happen in that space. And so so first and foremost, we need to elevate the voices of the people who come from those communities. Those people need to be able to tell their own stories. But should they be limited to only telling their own stories, or only telling the stories of people who look like them? No, absolutely not. To people who come from dominant cultures, should they be limited to telling only their own stories? I don't think so either. I think there is a level of responsibility that comes with that, and there are debts incurred that are complicated. I think if you come from a dominant culture and you're writing some characters that don't come from your culture, you have a real obligation not only to make sure that you have done adequate research and that you have spoken to people from those cultures, but also to elevate the work of people who are speaking directly from those cultures, who are telling stories of their lived experience. But and all of that is very real. What I don't want it to be reduced to is we only tell our own stories. We only write about the people that look exactly like us, because I think what that does is, I think that's the death of empathy. And I think that, we become a library of narcissuses. There's a thing I think about a lot with, I was born in 1970. And when I was a kid, the world was a very different place. There were comics everywhere you went.
And for me too,
Yeah, which is true. Actually, there were comics everywhere, and then comics went into private spaces. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But also, when I was a kid, there were only 3 television stations, right? And so because of that, and I'm obviously speaking to the US experience. I'm not quite sure what it was.
Actually, pretty much the same. That 3 television stations at the beginning. At the beginning when I was kind of growing up, and then a 4th in the early 80s, and then a 5th, and then the explosion.
Right. So that's interesting, because that's exactly how it was for us, right? Fox was the 4th one, and then right. And now we have a bazillion. And there are good things about that. The good things are we're in this like quote unquote golden age of television because of the fact that we can, you know, no one is going to ever have the kind of ratings that shows had when there was no video games or cable to compete with them, right? And so you're working for a smaller piece of the pie, so you can really go niche with your show, and that enables you to do some really interesting things. They don't have to aim at the broadest appeal. And so that's fantastic, and that's one of the reasons why we have such tremendous quality television right now. But the bad side of this is when you and I were kids, we all watched the same shows, and you know, because it was the 1970s and there was this move towards a very imperfect kind of multiculturalism, we, you know, like the show Good Times was really important to me. That was, I came from a low income military family, and the kind of stress that my family dealt with for our economic station was not at all unlike the experience of Florida and James and their family on that show. And so that show was a really big deal to me. And I so I was watching and identifying with these families of color. I also watched Sanford and Son and Chico and the Man, and today, so we had, and I don't mean to say any of those shows were perfect or without bias, or sure. But today, you don't ever have to watch anybody that doesn't look like you, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so much more choice and more stories being told, right? I mean,
yeah. And what do like my children do not understand appointment television. They just do not get it. Like it is very confusing to them. Of like, well, it's not on until Sunday. What do you mean it's not on until Sunday? Like they haven't made it yet. I'm like, well, that's when it airs, is on Sunday, and they're just like, what do you? Yeah. I don't. Like that's a language they completely do not understand.
My girlfriend and I are going through this with Succession right now. We have to wait until Monday.
Yeah.
Monday to watch it, and it's agonizing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean there is a kind of broadening of the scope now that I think is wonderful, and you see it in comics too. I mean, and that is fantastic, and I think it's really pleasing to me to be able to see so many more Wonder Woman books out there, for example.
Yeah, and like I want there to be something for everyone, and I want everybody to be able to see themselves. But I also want, how do we then make sure that, how do we encourage people to choose to see someone else's reflection?
Yeah, I mean, it is, I think in a way, it partly kind of goes to what we were talking about at the beginning of the interview with the title, by almost cloaking it in that, and sorry, inverted commas, but acceptable superhero veneer.
Yeah.
You then have a kind of almost stealth entry point into other things, right? As with all stories, stories are delivery mechanisms for ideas. Yeah, I guess. I
mean, all art, and every artist has to define art for themselves. But for me, art is, the purpose of it is to connect us to ourselves and to one another, and to be able to see the world through someone else's eyes, or to imagine a different outcome, or different possibilities. a different future, a different past. I think those things are all really relevant to the people that we become. And, you know, and I feel like even as we're discussing it now, even as I put it forward and said, you know, like, back in the day, we all had shared experiences and you got to see other people didn't look like you and it was better. It's like, I don't know that it was better. I don't think it was better. I think it was, we gained some things and we lost some things. But one of the things that we lost was the sort of, you know, you watched what was on, and what was on asked you to see the world through eyes that didn't look like you all the time. And that, I think there was something there. There's also, I'm trying to, here we go. My husband found this for me the other day, and it was interesting because the book was named, you know, 3 years ago or whatever. And, but Matt found, I'm kind of jumping topics here, but Matt found this, because when you said, talking about like the idea of the word Historia, right? And Matt found this Art Spiegelman quote that says, my dictionary defines comic strip as a narrative series of cartoons. A narrative is defined as story. The most definitions of story leave me cold, except the one that says a complete horizontal division of a building. From medieval Latin historia, a row of windows with pictures on them.
Amazing.
A row of windows with pictures on them. If that is not, I mean, like if that's not comics, like, anyway.
And, you know, language connects us across time. It you know, sometimes you can hear a word and see and you can immediately get the sense of an origin of that word, and that actually I didn't know, and was just that is fantastic.
Such a great, like, oh wow, that feels like the universe tapping me on the shoulder, right?
Yeah. And it's strange because you start to see why the world is the shape it is, and how civilization is the shape it is, good and bad. You know, I mean, that's incredible. Thank you for that.
You know, and we always like to acknowledge that, you know, comicking, we don't know exactly when human beings developed oral language,
right?
We assume it was very, very early, but we don't know. And so, assuming that that's correct, oral storytelling is the first storytelling. But the first storytelling that we have evidence of is comics. That's what the paintings in Lascaux are. You know, that's what, you know, there's even an argument to be made that hieroglyphics are comics. I disagree, actually, but it's a valid argument by some smart people. But cave paintings are absolutely 1,000% comics. It's sequential images telling a story. Pardon me.
That's right. And of course, you're then dealing with the idea that back then, of course, you weren't talking about a fictionalized narrative, because one is assuming that perhaps imagination didn't have quite the scope that it has now, and therefore what you were dealing with is pure communication.
Well, we don't know, though, right? So we know that those paintings were about a buffalo hunt because we can see, oh, that's a buffalo and that's a person, right? But we don't know if that was a buffalo that happened. We don't know if that was a buffalo hunt they were praying for. We don't know if that was a buffalo hunt that they were planning you know, like we don't know. All we know is a story. So it could have been the story of something that happened. It could have been a kind of prayer, a kind of willing into being, or it could have been strategizing. Don't know.
Yeah, and from there, I guess superhero comics into, you know, a willing into being, because I can't imagine anyone who doesn't read superhero comics without imagining themselves as that hero. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there's so much there to kind of unpack. We'll probably depressingly really find out that it was the beginnings of the earliest capitalism. If we catch one buffalo this summer, and
there you
then
go.
next summer, and we can sell one of those.
It's actually it's just a ledger. It's just a ledger. Or like, okay, look. You're probably right. Oh God.
I hope not.
We're not. Doomed.
I mean, we've roamed all over the place here. We've gone.
Oh yeah, we were going to talk about Historia, right?
In case anyone forgets, we were
very bad at staying on topic.
No, it's fine. I love it. I always think these are designed just to let creators roam where they want to roam and talk about what they want to talk about. So just to sort of capture, you know, go back to the book if we can, just briefly.
Yes, please, let's do.
No, so I don't want to keep you too long. I'm sorry. It's you know, you've given up so much of your time to do this.
Oh, you're so kind.
I think that. Is there? I mean, obviously, we have to talk about just briefly the delays, but I mean, those delays have helped because they seem to have really allowed Phil to you know, go wild in the best possible way.
Oh yeah, no, the book took 3 years.
Yeah,
I mean books don't take 3 years. It's 64 pages. It took 3 years. When we started this, I think if he had known it was going to take him that long, he would not have taken the book on. Also, he tried to not take the book on. You know, when I called, and I didn't actually even call him, the editor called him first because, you know, I gave my wish list of artists, and the editor called, and Phil was like, "Oh, I really enjoyed reading this pitch, but I'm gonna pass because I don't even remember what his reasons were." And that was clearly how much I respected his reasoning and autonomy. And I asked the editor, "Is it okay if I call him directly?" And the editor was like, "If it's okay with him, it's okay with me." And so we got on the phone, and I was like, "I really want you to do it, please." You know, and I don't remember what the thing, but one of his things was, "I'm not fast." And I'm like, that's DC's problem. I don't give a shit, you know? And, oh, I'm sorry. Can I curse?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. You know, it's like, I'm not fast either. I'm not a fast writer. But this book doesn't have to be monthly, so I don't think it matters. Now, I don't think, you know, either one of us knew we were talking about 3 years, but also I don't regret it. I think when you see those pages, you see every minute of those 3 years. You know, we could publish a script book or put a script in, you know, I'm sure if we do a collected version, we'll put scripts in it, but what you'll miss in the script is the hours of phone calls and text messages and conversations. And Phil even came here. He came to Oregon to hang out with me and my family. And, you know, and I went up to New York, and the script isn't the whole story. Everything is on the page. And then there's like stuff, you know, we were going through the lettering pass the other day, and the editors were asking me some questions about one of the spreads, and I'm explaining stuff to them, and they're like, can we get this in there? And I'm like, in dialogue? No, we can't, like, no. But he's like, people are going to miss the, Chris was like, man, I hate for people to just miss it. And I'm like, yeah, me too. But, I can't tell them what they're looking at.
Right.
But what we'll do is we'll do things like these podcasts, or maybe, we'll do some end notes in a collected edition or something. But like, yeah, so the page we were talking about was the goddesses traveling to hell. And I have a colored version of this page now, since that came in after I printed this. So this is nothing. But so
wow.
in here, so when the goddesses decide, all right, we're doing this, they all have to travel to hell. And it's hell. Well, they go to Hades. They go to Tartarus specifically, which is a place in Hades. But that's our version. That's the Hades is like the Greek. It's actually both heaven and hell. It's the Greek afterlife, but in Tartarus is the part of it that's hell. But hell is a state of being. Hades is a place. All you have to do is get there is die. If death is not an option, there are other ways in. And then it goes through how each goddess gets there, and it's for you see Demeter standing on this. Let's see if I can show you this.
Hold on. I think I can. I can just put you up. Hold on. There we go.
There you go.
Let's try that. There you go.
You see Demeter standing on this incredibly elaborate floor that tells its own story. So there's like comic books within comic books in this, which is just completely insane. But anyway, so there's Demeter. Demeter goes through the front door. Demeter here is meeting with Hades and his lieutenants because of the story of Persephone. Demeter is owed, so she she doesn't have to sneak in. She's like, Hades owes me. I'm going through the front door. So she just walks in, and then Hecate goes on hand and knee, and then like Hecate is crawling to hell through this barbarous experience. And Athena is, when we talk about Athena, we usually talk about she's the goddess of wisdom and war, and like that's not actually accurate. The Greeks were not people that had like a male and female god of something, right? So Ares is the god of war. Athena is more accurately representative of the city. So she is like wisdom and strategy. So there's certainly, she's not a fighter, but it's really about sort of a citadel more than it is about warring. And so it's like, all right, what's hell for the city? And so Athena is traveling over a river of refugees, a river of pain. Like more than she could take in, more than she could care for. That's her hell. So, but so that's here, right?
Get you back up on your own there. Then,
okay.
I can't remember how I did it now.
No, that's all right. I think we can see it. There we go.
Right, there we go.
Okay. But all it says in the text is over the river of pain, because that's one of the, there are several in traditional Greek mythology, there are several rivers. And then there's a river of forgetting. And so Aphrodite goes through the river of forgetting, because what's more painful for a lover than to be forgotten? you
Right.
know?
Okay.
And so it's so on and so forth through that. And like on the last panel of the page, you see Demeter has had her conversation with, let's see. So that's Hades, and I can't do this backwards. There's Hades, and then down here, Demeter has walked right past him into hell. So, and like all of those, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 individual stories. Well, I guess it's not 8 because it's 7. There are 7 individual stories on this page because there's 2 that deal with Demeter and Hades.
What, I mean,
and they're fully realized.
Yeah.
And they're not, you're gonna just read right over them. And so anyways, it's sort of like every page has stuff like that. And and Chris and Andrea, our editors, were like, can we get more of this stuff in? I'm like, we kind of can't. Like, it would be like patting ourselves on the back. It would be like, look how clever we are. Like, spelling everything out, telling you what you're looking at. So I think what the right thing to do is just like, put it out there and invite people to spend time with the pages and invite people to engage with all the little stories.
I mean, so like the problem for me is, so we do a weekly podcast reviewing comics, and we usually have to read them quite quickly, and sometimes because of scheduling, we like, I mean, last week I only got to read them about an hour before.
That's
like the 2 or 3 comics. Don't think I can do it with this one. I think that's going to have to be read very carefully several times. I mean, when you began the idea, when you first started, because I'm assuming it wasn't necessarily a thing that DC came to you with. You went to them with it. You kind of came up with the idea and went, "Hey,
yes and no.
Interest in doing this."
DC called me and said, "Hey, do you want to do a Black Label book?" And I said, "Can I do the Amazons?" And they were like, "Write up a pitch." So that was how it went. So yes and no. I did not say, "Oh, I have this story spontaneously I want to do." It was Mark Doyle. Forgive me, Mark. I don't know why your name just like poofed out of my head. Mark Doyle, who has moved on from DC now, but is a tremendous dude and a tremendous editor. And yeah, he reached out. Actually, don't know if it was Mark or Andy Curry who called me first, but they were working together on the Black Label launch. And one of them called me, and yeah, I was like, here's the concept for Black Label. And frankly, I think it was because I'm bad at monthly deadlines. I'm a slow writer. And so I think the idea was like, it doesn't have to be monthly. You can, we can get you ahead and you can do something that's sort of more prestige and format, and it's outside of continuity, so it doesn't matter. We can schedule it independently. We just think he'd be a really great fit for it. And I was like super into that idea. And I was like, all right, so interestingly, I didn't read a Marvel comic until I was growing up, or rather until I was an adult. When I was growing up, I read all horror, Archie, and DC. And I think it was just because that's what my neighbors collected, and they had a billion comics. And so I read comics in their basement. And it was dad, 3 boys and a girl, and the girl was my age, and the brothers and the dad all collected comics, and so Missy and I would just hang out down there and read all the comics, and so I didn't really, there wasn't that much choice. I read what was there, and that
Yeah,
was what
sure.
what was there. They were DC people, so I was a DC person. And my mom would buy me. I had some of my own. My mom would buy me Wonder Woman, in particular, and also Vampirella. But anyway, so I was trying to think like all right, what do I love with DC that I want to do something with it? And like my favorite character, maybe my favorite character in comics is Lois Lane, but that's a little too close to my heart. Like you almost don't want to do your favorite because then it becomes
Sure.
like I've gotten to write Lois like sort of on the periphery, and it was like, great, good, I'm done. Like I've written her twice. And I don't think I want, I don't know. I might change my mind, but I don't think I want to go too deep in there because it's so special to me. I would be worried that making it part of my work would somehow change that. Sure. Or risk it anyway. And Wonder Woman, the Amazons was really important to me growing up. And I had just seen the movie, I think, and I didn't love the way the Amazons were portrayed in the movie,
in the most recent Patty Jenkins film from a few years back. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And I mean, no disrespect. I was just like, I don't know. I felt like, but the movie wasn't about the Amazons. It was about Wonder Woman, and I felt like it just wasn't so much pro women as it was pro Wonder Woman. And the Amazons, we didn't get to see a whole lot of their culture. All we saw was them preparing for war. And then it's like, you're preparing for war, but there's a war, but you're not going to go because you want to protect Diana, but Diana's going to go. Like, it was just like, I was like, okay. Wait, what? And, so anyway, it didn't. And again, that wasn't there. I don't mean any disrespect. I know that movie was really important to a lot of people, and I'm super glad that it exists. And, but I was like, I want to kind of dig into the Amazons a little more. And then I was thinking about that, and then it was like, well, what do I want? Like, what's, and my husband's always like, swing big, and so I was like, I want a Homerian epic with a woman at the center. That's what I want. And so it was like, epic. What's an epic? And so, so I came up with this thing that's like 9 64-page books. And they're divided into 3. Like each has a story. Each of the books has a story arena, but each comprises a chunk of the history of the Amazon. And, it's just like, it was audacious, which is why I wanted Phil, right? Because like big, audacious, epic.
And just briefly, was there any consideration of Phil doing the next 2 issues, or was it always going to be an interchange of artists?
No, I think initially it was like, and we'll do, but I don't know if Phil never agreed to do all of that. But I think I mean, in some regard, I bullied him into doing this one, but, and I can't, I'm incapable of overstating how amazing he is and how much he has brought to this work and how important he has become to me, as I've been so lucky in that, you know, I've gotten to collaborate with some really incredible artists over the years, and there are some that just become family, you know, and Phil has become family. And even though he's not drawing the subsequent issues, and even though we only got greenlit for 3 of my 9, the middle 3 of which would be like the Return of the Jedi, you know, or the Empire Strikes Back rather, and like, you know, like, you know, people are like, wait, but you know, I'm still crossing. I'm still like, if we do enough numbers, maybe they'll let us do all of them. But
I hope they will, because I do remember when we met briefly in London, you did talk to me about, you know, where you want the story to end, which I obviously won't give away here, and I'm sure you don't want to. But it was just like, oh yeah, that would be a perfect point to end and begin on. So I mean, like I definitely want to see the books continue. Yeah. So I'm going to be rushing out there and making sure I grab this first issue and encouraging as many people as I can to grab.
But you know what? If we never get more than these 3, I'm going to be thrilled. It's okay. I hope we get all 9, but it's still a whole story, just these 3, and it's beautiful. You know, all 3 artists have been absolutely incredible, but you know, Phil has just, I don't even like, words fail me because it all sounds like hyperbole, but like, all you have to, I don't have to say anything, just look at it.
Yeah,
you know,
sure. And in seeing the previews online, I was looking at some today, sort of in prep for this, and the things you very kindly showed me in London. I mean, just
it's unbelievable,
utterly mind blowing. Yeah,
no,
I really hope
there are narratives on the armor. Like there's stories on the armor. Like it's comics within comics within comics. It's insanity.
And it's stuff you couldn't do necessarily in film, because you don't have that thing of just holding the page in front of you and taking the extra 5 minutes to look at that and look at that panel and read that line, or,
you know, or you know, we tend to read comics sort of going like we go, you know, we turn to a page and then we get, and like, oh wait, and we go back, and we, you know, like you don't read or you don't watch a TV show or a movie like that. You don't like stop and move forward and right, like I mean, I guess you could, but it's usually just because like you're going to the bathroom or something, not because you're really trying to take in every you know. So
I mean, that hopefully people get into it. The book is out 30th of November, am I right?
The 30th, yes. So there were the big delays, the 3 years were on us, but the last 2, it was supposed to be out mid-October, but COVID and paper shortages pushed us to November 30th. That's not on us. That's just what it is.
I mean, it's certainly playing, you know, every week doing the podcast, we have to kind of really stay in touch right up until sort of Wednesday morning, really, because, you know, my colleague Liz is in the US, I'm here, and she's getting different books to the books I'm getting, because you know, they're not all turning up in the UK.
Shipping is a thing now, right? So I should actually probably take off because I got to get my like I don't think you can see her anymore. She's moved out of the frame, but Stella, my black dog, has this lump. She needs to go see the vet.
Well, our best wishes to Stella, and
thank you.
I hope she's okay. Thank you so much for giving us so much of your time. The interview is kind of taken us places I didn't expect to go, and I'm really grateful for that, because it's been such an interesting kind of exploration of ideas, and I think that's the important thing with comics, with any stories. and it's certainly going to be important to this one. And
Well,
I really look forward to grabbing it. Sorry.
No. I'm the one that started talking over you. Don't apologize to me. I love this medium desperately, and it's so fun to talk to other people who care about it so much. So it is genuinely my pleasure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And then thank you for being for your time at oh my God, the name of your gosh, thank you. I was like, I'm so tired.
Not at all. It was a pleasure to get to speak to you. And I was really thrilled to kind of to meet you. Having sort of seen so much of your work in the last few years and really enjoyed it. And particularly enjoyed Bitch Planet. I really love that.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to this. I'm sure I'm going to absolutely adore it. So thanks so much, Kelly Sue.
Thank you.
My best wishes for the book. Also, just want to say thank you to Turner and to Lauren at DC for helping arrange this interview and for the time and effort they put in. Thank you very much.
Well, we'll pass
Kelly
that
Sue,
on.
again, thank you. Best wishes to the dog. I hope she's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, please let us know.
I will, actually.
Yeah, please
All
do. Thanks so much for that.
All right. Take care, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.